this is very pivotal in Hilchos Shavuos, right? Because we all know we eat a milchig meal on Shavuos. We eat milchigs on Shavuos. There's a minhag to eat milchigs on Shavuos, but the real minhag that the Ramah brings down is to eat milchigs and fleishiks in the same meal on Shavuos.
That's crazy.
In other words, first you eat milchigs, and then you switch over to fleishiks. Why? And which we said you could do if you rinse out your mouth and kinuach and adocha, you could switch from milchigs to fleishiks. Some people wait a half hour, which would make it difficult to keep this minhag unless you have a little break in the meal. But you're not mechuyev to bench in between. Some people say, well, you should bench. Some are noig to bench in between, but you don't really have to. But nonetheless, the Ramah brings down the minhag to eat in the same meal, to start with milchiks and then end up with fleishiks.
You're not adding a Suda, which is a problem? Like you're adding...
Adding, it's the same Suda.
No, if you bench in between.
If you bench, okay.
So you're just saying, the second Suda is not...
What I actually do is after staying up at night, I have milchiks for Kiddush. I make Kiddush, some milchiks, I'll wash with the designers and have some cheesecake, whatever. I go to sleep and then I have a fleishik meal. I don't know if that's...
you go to sleep, wake up, and then have a fleishik meal?
Yeah, I'm tired after the whole night.
What do you mean for lunch?
What?
He comes back.
Oh, when you
comes
come
back, has the milchig, goes to sleep, then...
I'm trying to understand this mechanism. When are you having your meat dinner? I didn't get that.
You're asking
Lunch.
Oh, for lunch. So that's right. I had it right.
So your lunch yourself.
So but L'maisa, Ramah says to have both in the same meal. Now, what's the reason for it? The reason for it is because there's a halacha. And the halacha is that you're not supposed to have the same bread on the table for milchiks and fleishiks. In other words,
what?
Bread. In other words, halacha is like this. If you had a milchig meal, the shiurei hapas, the leftovers of that bread, has to be put away for milchiks. And later, when you have a fleishik meal, you can't use that bread left over. So there's actually it's actually very negated shaila. But we'll get to that. So since you can't use the same bread, even though the bread is not milchiks or not fleishiks, the bread is parif, but you don't want to have it because you eat it with milchiks, you might get some cheese or something on the bread, and then when you have some bread left over from the meal and they can use it for fleishiks, you might have milchiks and fleishiks together on the same piece of bread. So therefore, as our chaka, it's a halach in Shulchan Aruch that one should remove the shiurei hapas from the bread.
So this would apply then as well.
From the table. So.
Our Shabbos challah that we used for flesh.
Excellent.
Then my wife will say, we have leftover, so let's use it for the cheese sandwich.
So we'll get to that in a moment. We'll get to that in a moment. But just to tell you what Ramah says in Hilchos Shavuos, he says like this. He says that since there's we know that the korban brought on Shavuos was shtei halechem, right? The shtei halechem was brought on Shavuos. 2 breads were brought with the kibsei atzeres. You had a special shlomim, which was 2 kvasim, 2 sheeps. So yeah, together with that, we brought 2 breads. There's a whole parak in Menachos about it. People learn about it, and they brought 2 breads with it. This is 2 breads. They were actually lechem or chametz. The most kabbanis are not chametz. It doesn't go on the mizbeach, but it was chametz to shtei halechem. And to commemorate the shtei halechem, so we want to have a suda where you have to have 2 breads. In other words, that we want to make a suda where you're mechuyev to have 2 breads. So how do you have such a suda? If you start with milchiks and end with fleishiks, so you can't use the same bread for the milchiks and fleishiks, so you're going to have to prepare 2 loaves of bread. One for the milchiks and one for the fleishiks, and this will remind you of the shtei halechem. So that, according to the Ramah, is the reason why we eat milchiks on Shavuos. Now, he says the Ramah, and therefore the minhag was to make actually a milchik bread. To make like a cheesecake bread, I don't know, make a milchik bread, and for when you eat the milchiks, and then have a regular bread for the fleishiks. Now that's another question. Really, you're not supposed to make bread. Halacha is you're not supposed to make milchik bread because people will confuse it. So you can't make it in a different shape, or if it's it has to be nicker, that it's or if you're making a small piece of bread like a challah roll that's going to be eaten in that one suda that you're allowed to do. There's not going to be anything
Are we still
left
calling
over.
it bread though? Is it still called bread if it?
Now that's a good question. It's still called bread. It has you make a mezainis on it, as the price can discuss. Perhaps they have to make a mezainis on it, depending how it's made. But the reason for the reason why we have milchiks is because, according to Rama, is because you want to have two breads, and in order to force us to have two breads, you eat milchiks and fleishiks in the same meal, and that's where it comes from. But
Couldn't you
again,
just have two dairy meals, one after another, bench, and then have another one? Doesn't it achieve the exact same purpose if you want to stay?
Yeah, you could do it, but that's where the minute came from. The minute to have dairy came in order to have two breads. Now, the Moshe has a truth. So here's the question. So what do you do with the challah? You know, if you ate Friday night or Shabbos morning, you had a big loaf of challah, you only ate half of it.
Right.
Now you want to use that second half for Shabbos Shudas when you plan on having milchiks, or Shabbos, plan on having milchiks. So Moshe actually has a tshuva, which he says, he sort of downplays it a little bit, and he says like this, he says, the halacha was only referring to shiurei hapas, the leftover breads. The leftover breads, in other words, you have pieces of bread on the table that are cut, even if you think that it didn't come in contact with any fleishiks. But since during the meal, it's lavadai to the person, you know, he's not focused on it. He's not focused on watching that this piece of bread shouldn't come in contact with fleishiks. He's just having a suda. So even though he thinks that it didn't come in contact, but that was the chashash, that maybe he wasn't, you know, focused on it, and someone came in contact with some fleishiks. But if you have a sliced bread and half of it is whole and wasn't cut yet, so that for sure didn't come in contact with fleishiks. It's not a shiloh, so that wasn't included in this chashash.
I'm sorry, which one's not included?
If you had a whole piece of challah and you cut it in half,
Right.
and you only used half of it, you cut slices and everybody had slices, but the rest, someone wanted, they would cut a piece, but otherwise it remained as a whole half a challah. So Rabbi Moshe seems to hold that that's not included in this takana. Takana is only the bread that was used on the table, but something which was not actually cut up and used, that he says that shouldn't be an issue of using it with milchiks later, because it didn't come in contact with
So that would
the rest of the suda.
That would also be because you put two loaves. The other loaf you don't cut into.
Yeah, so the other loaf you take off the table, you don't cut into. But even the one that you leave on the table, if you leave half that's not cut, so
It's just the slices then that are a
it's just the
problem.
slices that sort of were being used. Today, you know, a guy takes a slice, you don't put it back. You take a bite of it, you leave it. In the old days, no, you took a piece off and you took the shiur. They were very makbid on baltashkas, and
So
nothing should be left over and wasted.
So,
Today, we have a different concept of the food that they used to have.
You put the
A
second
sli- a
half away in the kitchen like the whole one. Would that accomplish?
So that's,
Right.
Yeah, that's even better. Yeah.
So a slice that's left over, though, that stays on, let's say, the bread plate, never goes to someone's plate.
Yeah, so I'm not certain about that. It could be that's something like what Moshe is saying, that wasn't part of the Suda, that would be okay. You know, I think they were talking more, the Shiori Apas, I know by my in-laws, you know, forget about food being left over. There's no such thing. You know, anyone who lived through the period of the Holocaust, there's no such thing as leaving over food. It's not in the vocabulary, you know what I mean? But we leave over a lot of food, a lot of bread, and a lot of pieces on the table. That's what they're referring to. But things which weren't used at all could be not even included, even if it was sliced. But if it was never taken off the bread plate and was never used, could be is not included. But Moshe does write that as a hiddur, it's still a hiddur not to use it. Because, you know, we you know, just in case it's a hiddur, you know, this is from milchiks, that's for fleishiks, not to use it, unless you're certain the taka didn't come into contact. It says there is a hiddur to not to use it, but as to halacha, this halacha he holds doesn't apply to something which wasn't put together, it wasn't used on the table.
How do we hold at the end of the day?
That's it. Like a mush. It could be like a mush. That thing you could use.
So those slices,
Yeah, you could use. But there is a hint. There is a hint that if you're gonna make a grilled cheese with the challah for the kids, make a grilled cheese or something. Maybe you should use a different piece of bread. I'll say hint about mushals, but I'll say mikra adin. It's not an issue. Okay. We'll get to other areas of our chokas where we separate milk and flesh. I just want to get back to what we started discussing last week. We left in the middle. So there's a question like this. We say achsher dara. In the old days, this didn't exist. Nobody had 2 sinks. Nobody had 2 ovens. Nobody had 2 anything. Everybody had 1. But today, well, the truth is, you spend $1.4 million on a house. You know how much does it cost to have the extra sink in there? You know what I mean? It's a tiny, a little bit.
Small house.
You're spending.
small house, cute.
That's a small house, yeah. But the amount you put into the house and the home and the renovations and all that. So if there's a shita that could be accomplished. So today's generation, we're more focused on these things that they might not have been focused on 50 years ago. But nonetheless, we have to know what's halacha and what's chumrah and and you see different people being knowing different things. You want to make sure that you know what you're doing. So the question will start with the stove top. There are those that are machmir to have a separate, to designate one of the
burners. The
burners, yeah, for milchiks, and use the other ones for fleishiks. I guess the thinking is that most of the cooking is fleishiks rather than milchiks. So let's say I have 4 burners, they'll designate 1, sometimes even 2. They'll designate it for.
New style is 2 stoves.
They'll designate it for what?
New style is 2 stoves.
New style is 2 stoves. Yeah, I'm talking about that.
And what about Pesach? They have a Pesach. Pesach.
Yeah, then they have a Pesach one downstairs, 3,
And then for
the nanny, the 4th, right?
and you forgot the
Where do you cook your parf stuff?
venison.
No
cheese.
stove.
5.
Right. So let's understand the halachic perspective of what's going on before we get back to the oven, which we discussed. Oven is a bigger issue. We discussed baking milchus and fleishiks together separately, how and what. So, what is the question? What are the issues? So there's a halacha. The halacha goes like this. We know people could accidentally make their pots treif. If it's a milchiga pot and they actually cook fleishiks in it, or fleishiga pot and cook milchiks in it, or they could splatter some milchiks and fleishiks onto the opposite pot. These things happen in every kitchen. So the question is, what does it take to make something treif? We know that if I take a fleishiga pot, that's a ben yoim, I will say, I used it today to cook, and then I cook some milchiks in the pot, so that is not very smart. And the food is going to be treif, okay? Normally, okay? Right? So you have a fleishiga pot and you cook milchiks, so you have a milchiga pot and you cook fleishiks. So why is that? Because the blias inside the pot, the
Pores. Hasn't
Flavor.
pores, the blias is the flavor. The flavor gets into the pot and comes out. When you cook, it comes out and goes into the thing. So that's what we call tam. Tam. And the halach is tam ke'ikr. The tam has the same strength as the main food.
So why do you call it blias? Why is it called
Blias
tam?
means it was swallowed up. It was swallowed up into the pot.
Well,
So it's in the pot.
I couldn't figure out what that word was.
That's what blias is. Blias is anything, any taste that goes into something else. So if I have a piece of meat and some milk went into it, we say it was boileach.
Right.
Milk
Blias is
into it.
the swallowed.
Yeah, swallowed in. So whatever's in the walls of the pot
I'm not talking about blias.
What does it come out?
comes out and goes into the meat. Now we'll discuss this maybe a different time exactly when it asks, how it asks, and all that. But there is such a concept.
Why
Now,
one day it stops? The taste stops after one day?
it becomes spoiled. In the walls of the pot, if it's there 24 hours, and that's called a eina ben yoimai. So again, excuse me. So if the pot is a ben yoimai, if it's the same day had food in it, so then it has blias in there, and that goes out into the food. But if it's an eina ben yoimai, if it's not the same day, it was halacha. We pass in 24 hours. Machlokes overnight at 24 hours. 24 hours. It hasn't been used for fleishiks. So now whatever fleish, whatever meat's in the walls of the pot, we say is pogum, has a sour taste, and therefore when that comes out and goes into your grill, it goes into your macaroni and cheese, it's already doesn't have a good taste, and therefore it's bottled. And
But you trafe the pot. You trafe the pot.
you trafe the pot, yeah. The pot you trafe, yeah. Because your pot now has. Now that's another interesting question: is your pot trafe, or is your pot simply unusable because it has milchiks and fleishiks in it? In other words, we said basa b'chol that's cooked together becomes asa b'hana, and that's basa b'chol. Now that's like treif. But you may have basa b'chol in the same pot that's not cooked together. It's just you have basa in there and you have cholov in there, and now you're in a catch-22. I can't cook milk with this pot, and I can't cook meat with this pot. Perhaps I could cook pyrav.
It's pogum, you said.
If it's not pogum.
That's not-
If it's not pogum.
You're still talking about ben yoma. in this
Yeah,
case.
if it wouldn't be pogum. So that's a discussion exactly what the status of that pot is on the nafkaminas. But for our purposes, back to what we're discussing, so anything that goes in could come out and could trafe up the food inside. Okay, that's a rule that we have in Bas B'chalov and all trafers, so we have to be aware of that. Now,
This was
we
dealing
learn- what?
This was dealing with pots that were cast iron originally. The pots today have a different.
pots today are much more smooth, and there are some that want to say so we don't, maybe there's no blias in there, but
We don't rely on that.
we don't rely on that. That's the rules. We don't have really the right to change the rules, and the rules are anything of metal is by Leah takes it. So glass, on the other hand, is something which the halacha, there's a machlekes in the pricing of glass actually swallows in because it's it's very smooth. But as far as metal, the halacha says that it does swallow in, so we don't veer from that. So getting back to our issue, now there's a big clause here. In other words, let's say I'm cooking chicken soup, okay, and you're pouring next to the chicken soup a cup of milk, and a piece of milk, a little bit of milk splashes over, hits the side of the pot on the outside. So it doesn't matter; it's on the outside. The pot's very hot. The milk goes into the pot, and it goes into the food. It can go through the pot into the food, and that will also too. But there's a very important clause here, and that is that's a liquid. If I have two pots, shtei kadeus shenoigezubazu, that touch each other, if I have two pots, dry pots that touch each other, even if this is a fleishiger pot and this is a milchiger pot, nothing happens, because ein blia, the stuff that's inside the walls of the pot cannot come out and go into the next thing without liquid. You need liquid in between to move the taste from one pot to the next pot.
And it has to be hot.
That has to be hot. So shtei kadeus hanoigezubazu, two pots that are touching each other, do not transfer anything from one to the next.
What if there's liquid in each one, or one of them?
Even if there's liquid in each one,
So
but
like
if
one
in
light-
between there's no liquid,
So why doesn't it go there?
You mean overflowing
Like if
liquid?
liquid touches the outside,
it'll go through.
it goes through the wall on the inside.
Right.
But if liquid's on the inside, it can't go the other way?
It could go the other way, but it's
interesting.
two pots.
I know it's two,
It's
but-
two pots, so it'll stop by the end of the first pot. It's not going to go to the second pot.
So it looks like liquid
If
only
you have
goes-
liquid on the outside,
Yeah.
so this pot is full of liquid, so liquid will go in and this liquid will pull it out. But if you have two solid pots next to each other, so it's not going to go from one to the next.
Right.
So the
Well, my
heat of the
question-
two doesn't permit,
Wait.
it's a one-way direction?
It's only outside in for liquid. If liquid's inside, it is contained.
It's
It
not
can't
gonna
escape.
transfer.
It can't go
It
through
can't
the
go-
wall.
it
The
could
liquid
go-
from the outside can go in.
Because you have liquid on the outside, because you have liquid directly touching the pot.
You have liquid on the inside directly touching the pot.
Right, so it'll go into the pot. But it won't come out to go into the next
That's what I'm
pot.
saying. It's interesting that liquid
No,
on the
'cause it
inside
can't get
is
into the
contained.
next pot.
It can't go out.
Yeah.
So two burning pots that are clean,
Right.
meat and dairy that touch each other?
No
it's not
problem.
traffic.
If they're clean, right.
So I'm a little confused.
Would I guess
You
not.
have a pot of chicken soup, and then let's say on your next burner you have something that's whatever, milchig, whatever,
Right.
and a drop of that touches the outside of the chicken soup pot. Did I hear right that that's
It goes
considered? It does go through.
If some of the food touches the outside of the pot, that will go in. the food touches. But if the two pots touch each other, you're okay.
So what do we consider then in terms of the inside of the pot, both the pot and the food then?
Everything's good. Two pots touch each other, nothing transfers, and the pots remain as they were before.
It's like nothing happened.
But if you have the chicken soup and you have some milk, something, liquid of some kind of...
Touches the side of the pot.
Now what happens to the contents of the
Now
chicken soup
you have
pot?
to start seeing if you have 60 against it. There you have a whole sugya which it's a whole similar Shulchan Aruch of tipas. Actually, it's called tipas cholav that hit the side of a pot. There's actually a whole discussion on it in the Gemara and the Shulchan Aruch. How you count the 60? Is the 60 from the tipas or from the pot? It's a complicated halacha, which we're not entering right now. The point I'm making here is that two solid kalim that touch each other, nothing happens if there's no liquid in between. So if you took your fleshig pot and you accidentally put it down on your milchig counter, marble milchig counter, you're okay as long as it was dry. As long as it's dry. If it was wet, now you have to know the pot is very hot. Now you have a shayla v'lo govar, tatar govar. We'll get to that one day maybe. What happens? But if it's dry, you have no problem because two kalim that touch each other, that are dry, it doesn't transfer from one to the next. That's a rule. Now, even though that's a rule, so according to that rule, just to break it down simply over here, so I have two burners, I have a burner that's good in fleishiks because I spilled a lot of chicken soup all over it over all my years of cooking on that burner. So now I want to put a milchig frying pan to do my cheese blintzes for Shavuot on that burner. So as long as it's clean, there's no piece of meat on there.
On the
burner.
The burner has no meat on it.
As long as the burner is clean and it's dry, so who cares? There's no problem, right? Because two kalim that are noigim zebazeh have there's no blias that transfer from one to the next.
It's a little bit of milk that dropped on the bottom of your frying pan.
We'll get to that. I think that's a good question. So I'm just telling back to halacha. If you have two dry things, we don't care. Things don't go from one to the next. Now, even though we don't care, there is a halacha that says l'chatchila. Here's where it gets sticky. We have halacha that says l'chatchila we don't do it. We don't take two burning hot pots and touch them together. Even though one's milk and one's fleishings are dry, it doesn't go one to the next. So the question is, what's the basis of that l'chatchila? So it's a big machlokes in the poskim. So Rav Moshe in his tshuva, it's in the test, he says like this. He says, he's talking about, we'll get to what he's talking about, but he says like this. He says that this halacha that you shouldn't touch them together is only a chashash that maybe they'll spill over something in between and you'll have some wetness in between. But there's no chumrah, two dry things touching each other are not allowed to touch each other. It's just a chumrah because you may have some wetness in there. Or, even without wetness in there, if the pots are so close together and they're both full, you may have splashing over from one pot directly into the next pot. But if you have an empty pots, let's say you have two empty pots, one milchas and one fleishiks that are burning hot, there's no issur to put them next to each other. That's what Moshe writes. And that's always mashma in the Mishabura, and Agam there are others that are choylek on it, that hold that l'chatchila shouldn't be done. There's another svara here. In other words, we want to use the burner that might be fleishiks to put a milchig pot on it. So, it could be there's no issur at all. It's two dry pots. And even if you want to be machmer, that there's a chumrah of two dry pots, it could be that's only when they're full with food. But if one of them's empty, there's no such halacha.
What kind of burner?
So that's a good question. What kind of burner? Let's discuss right now just either the coils or the gas.
There's a difference.
Yeah.
Big difference.
Yeah.
One's metal, one isn't.
So Rabbi Moshe's tshuva is really, the shaila that he's discussing is, do you have to kasher the burners? Do you have to kasher the burners?
What about burning off though? Doesn't that kasher it?
Yeah.
Oh, so for Pesach we actually kasher the burners. We don't know we kasher the burners. But he says that's a chumrah b'yalma. Mikra adin, it's actually a loch in Shulchan Aruch, Hilchos Pesach. The chatzuva doesn't have to be kashered because it self-kashers itself. The coils self-kasher itself, and the burners on the gas self-kasher itself. It's on the fire.
But
So-
doesn't that only depend on how hot they are?
Yeah.
What if you like to only use to warm things up and it's low? Maybe
Right.
it's not hot enough.
Right, okay, good. So A, it self-kashes itself. B, there's another svara here. We're going through the whole tshuva in order here, but there's another svara here that anything that falls on it gets burnt. In other words, you're never going to have liquid stuff remaining there. Anything that falls on it burns up. So either it burns up and it's not around, or it burns up and it never even gets swallowed into the... It could be it burns up so fast it doesn't even get swallowed up into the burner. So there are svaras to say that a burner is better than a pot. A pot, we have to be choishish. There may be something will spill in between. A pot, you have to be choishish. But a burner, something which always has a fire on it, there's no chumrah. So he holds it's pashit that there's no. The Moshe holds it's pashit that there's no reason to be machmer at all to have a separate burner for milchiks and fleishiks. Something might spill over, but there are klal. Anything that spills is a minimal amount, which doesn't cause a problem, and it gets burnt up right away. So that's what Moshe holds. There are others that take the more stricter opinion, and they say, well, there's a halacha. They hold even two dry pots that are touching each other. L'chatchila shouldn't touch each other, even though b'diavad it's mutter. Therefore, l'chatchila one should separate a burner, especially since there are spillages and this, and who said it gets so hot, the burners. Certain parts of the burners don't get so hot, so there are those that are machmer on it. And that's fine. There are those that are machmer on it. Where Moshe holds that you don't have to be machmer on this, and you can have a same burner for milchiks and fleishiks.
Is that true for the ceramic tops?
So chayav for the ceramic tops, he didn't discuss it because it wasn't there then. But there are svaras there also, because glass, it's a glass top. There's a question whether glass is by Leah. So questions of glass, and now it's very hard to understand what the tops are. But if it's considered a glass top, then it could be, it has an added heter that it's not even by Leah.
Yeah, because they're so smooth.
Yeah, but one thing you have to be very careful with the glass top is that it's taka clean. Because if you have pieces of fleishiks on it, and then you put your milchik pot on it, that could really be a problem. So therefore, while the burners, I think, is less of an issue of being clean, because they get red hot, but the glass top, could be certain areas get burnt up because it's red hot, but there's certain areas that are less hot, so one has to be careful when you put down your milchik and fleishiks, that you're careful where you put it.
Quick
That it's
question.
clean.
You keep saying the word burner. Is this going back to when everybody had gas?
No, I'm just calling it a burner. Whatever it is, on the glass top also, that area where taka gets red hot, you could assume whatever's on this is fabrent. But sometimes you slide the pot over a little bit. One has to be very aware that the middle areas are not kosher. Okay? It's basar and cholov there. There's spillages of basar and the spillage of cholov on those middle areas. And therefore, if you're going to put something down there, it should be dry and clean.
Is that why we don't travel glass? Same reason?
Eh?
That we don't travel glass? Same reason?
We do
that
travel
don't travel glass?
You have to be table glass. Glass is like a, you have to be table, yeah.
So we don't have to
Yeah.
travel glass.
You have to be table glass. So the middle area is a real by any stove, by every stove and oven. The middle area is not, has basar in there and has cholov in there, and one shouldn't put anything down unless it's clean and dry. That should be a rule.
That's true for a regular oven as well.
Regular oven as well, right? Regular oven is harder to put things down because the grates are higher and lower.
Right.
But the glass, it just slides, you
Well,
know.
it
You put it
looks like
over here,
one
you
piece.
slide. So one has to be very aware of that mitzias.
But that whole surface gets hot, even though you have full burner.
It gets hot, but
Even
it's
in the middle, it
not
gets
so
hot.
hot. It's not
Not
so hot.
burning hot.
It's not burning hot. If you would, I tried it actually. If you would take water and splash it on there, it wouldn't, lav dafka would even sizzle.
Uh-huh.
Certain areas are close to wood, but certain areas it won't even. It's not so hot.
Why are you worried about the outside? Then it will go straight through the pot?
Yeah,
On the
if there's
outside.
food on the outside, it'll go straight through, yeah.
Straight through?
It goes
If
straight
it's a
through.
thick pot, the metal
Yeah,
pot.
yeah, it goes straight through, yeah. Right, as I said. Okay. So that's something to be aware of. Now, how does this involve our ovens? So back to the oven. So the oven, we said there's two issues here. We spoke last week, we started talking about the oven. There's one issue of Zaya, which we'll get back to, and there's one issue of the rack. Okay, you have one rack. So let's just being that we're on this Indian, let's discuss the rack. So normally people don't bake directly on the oven rack. People usually have a pan. In the old days, they baked in the old days, the time of the Gemara, they baked their challah or bread on the side of the oven mamish. Or the pashtidas, in what call this, which is some kind of blintz that has cheese in it, was on the side of the oven. But today, you have pans. Basically, everything's baked in pans. So everything's in pans. Yeah, it used to be on the side, but now everything's in pans. So you're putting your pan on the rack. That's shtei kalim. It's mamash our case. You have two kalim that are touching each other. So even if you want to claim the rack is, let's say, fleshiks, because when you cook the chicken, a lot of the sauce boiled over and spilled onto the rack. I'm sure over many times of cooking there's going to be spillage, and it's going to get onto the rack. So the rack, let's say, is a fleshik the rack. And now I want to make a pizza in there. So I put my pizza in the oven.
On a pan.
On a pan. So we're not concerned, again, this goes into the same discussion, are we concerned that the blios will go from the rack to the pan? So again, it's two dry things that are touching each other. Two dry things that are touching each other, it doesn't transfer. But you get into this question, is it lechatchilu b'diavad?
But it doesn't transfer if there's no heat, but now you have heat.
It doesn't transfer with heat unless you have liquid in between.
Oh, right.
Even if it's like a sticky piece of meat or something like that, like never mind liquid, but
Yeah, if there's actually a sticky piece of meat left on the rack, you have a problem. You have a real problem, because you're putting you have a real problem. So if you're using the same rack for milchiks and fleishiks, it has to be clean. You can't have a sticky piece of meat.
But then you also have, I forget what it's called, but when you have the gases or the moisture or whatever from your fleshik rack going into your oven.
that's the next step.
The vapors, you mean?
Vapors.
We'll get to Zay, we'll get to vapors, but whatever's left on that rack after you finish baking is usually pretty burnt,
Toast,
dry.
yeah.
It's
So
not going to make
do we
vapors.
still consider it meat?
Yeah, I mean, you have to try it, taste it, see if it's still meat. I would imagine it depends how high the oven is, how much it was burnt, you know.
No, I mean, there's a practical side too, right? Because like if it's hard to clean and it looks sort of charcoaly, you know.
Yeah, so if it's taka burnt, there's a big svar to say that that's not meat anymore. If it's charcoal, it's not meat. Charcoal is not meat. Even meat that turns into charcoal is not meat. But sometimes it wasn't on so high the oven, and you might have something on there. So the rack has to be clean to that extent. But you're right. If it's burnt out, it's burnt out, and it's burnt out. You know, then it's taka not meat. But that would be one issue. That would be one issue. Now, even though we said the burners are not a problem with chatchila, the question is there a question with chatchila with the racks? Because it's not on the fire direct necessarily. So Rabbi Moshe seems to be not concerned with that either. He seems to be not concerned with that either. He seems to be not concerned with that either. And therefore the olam is noyeg, the minhag of the olam was to be makel to use the same racks for milchiks and fleishiks. Again, there are those that are machmer. But the reason for the machmer is because it is chomer that lechatchila, two dry things that touch each other. But the Moshe seems to be makel, he holds that since the rack is not holding any food, and two empty pots that are touching each other is not a problem, so you don't have a problem here either.
Of course, you have self-cleaning ovens today.
If you clean, look, if you're self-cleaning in between, there's no question, it's kasher. But if it's not kasher in between, you're not self-cleaning every time you cook from milchiks to fleishiks, so then you don't have that.
But if you even raise the oven to its
so we'll
maximum.
We'll get to that. So now, okay, we'll get to that. So we're going to get to that. So now we have a second issue. The second issue we discussed last week is the zeya, is the steam. So there's two issues when it comes to steam. Steam, if something's steamed, if there's a lot of steam, that's as if it's full of water. We learned that out of Mishnah Machshirin. Could be some achloikis over there. That steam is like water. And therefore, if you have a pot full of water, the oven becomes the sort of the walls of the pot. The oven becomes the walls, and it's full of water, and you have your chicken in the middle or your meat. So the whole oven becomes fleishiks now. Then you take out the meat and you put in something else, a lasagna or something, and it steams up, and the whole oven becomes like a pot that's being used now for milchiks. Well, you got a problem. So if there's what we call zeya, steam, you have an issue. Now, the halachos of steam, again, are very complicated. What's called steam? It doesn't have to be a direct hit. You have steam coming out of a pot and it hits something. That's called zeya. But sort of once it starts spreading, eilach v'eilach, maybe that's not called zeya anymore. It's already, it's not as concentrated. Maybe it's not even as hot, but it's not as concentrated, so maybe that's not called zeya. But what boils down to the question about the ovens is really this. A small oven, we're machmer on, that is considered, a small oven is considered full of zeya. For example, let's say a microwave oven. Microwave oven gets very steamy. If you ever open up a microwave oven in the middle of cooking, right afterwards, the steam comes pouring out on your face. So there's a lot of steam in there. Especially if there's a liquid that you're heating up in there. The thing is very, very steamy. And there's no question that a microwave oven, if you cook fleishiks or milchiks in it, it becomes milchiks and fleishiks. It's tremendously steamy, and it gets all over. But and there's really no vent. There's really no real vent that allows it to escape. There are tiny vents, but nothing real.
The walls are so flat. Who says it went into the walls?
Goes in. When the steam goes into the walls, it goes in. It's
No, it
plastic.
doesn't go in every material. These are so smooth. They're not bliss or anything.
Yeah, so we say it goes in, unless it's glass is a question, but everything else it goes in.
How do you kosher a microwave?
Okay, we'll get to that, but it becomes milchiks or fleishiks. Now, but if you have a big oven, a tanu gadol,
What's a big oven?
well, that's a question. But if you have, the Gemara says, if you have a big oven, then we could assume that it's not as the steam is not as concentrated. It doesn't have necessarily the halach of steam. Something which has an exit, where the steam could sort of exit from, that gives it another venue that the steam could get out. We don't consider that the whole oven became steamed. Our ovens all have a vent on it. So Moshe Neshuva debates whether our ovens are considered a big oven or a small oven. How do we compare it to the old day ovens? We consider big or small. And does the vent constitute as a real opening that would allow us to consider that there's no issue of zeya? So we have what we call a suffix if there's zeya in the oven, because it's something which is very hard to define. Now there are those that will go with the opinion that there's no zeya in the oven. It's called a taner gadol. It's a big taner, and if there's a big taner and there's no zeya, technically I could do milchiks and fleishiks in the same oven, both open, two pans next to each other, a lasagna pan and my roast, both open. And it's a big oven, we don't consider the zeya, and they both remain kosher, no problem. It's a big oven, it exits.
This is
No zeya.
This is theoretical, I presume.
Halacha l'maisa, if it would come to you such a case, how would you pass it?
Oh, okay.
You make them throw
All
it
right, I
out?
understand.
Huh?
They never said a shear for a big oven?
I remember when I was a kid, not supposed to be right from a kid, but I remember when I was a kid, there was a Alter Yid in Farakaway who was a Talmud from Rabbi Shimon Shkop. Shimon Shkop had yeshiva in Groton. There was a Talmud from Shimon Shkop, and there was such a, I don't remember the exact details of the question, it was a similar type of question. And I think it was even by a toaster oven, the question was. I went to him, he says, it's all Taner Gadol's today. This is all Taner Gadol's, it's all Mutter. So he said, I remember. I didn't know at that time what a Taner Gadol was. I didn't know what any of these things were, but then I remember stuck in my head.
Mean large ovens?
Yeah, yeah. But there are different opinions there. Those that hold that the ovens are considered big, there's no issue of zeya, and Shalom Yisrael. There would be a zeya if you put something directly on top of both pots, where the steam will hit and sort of mix. But otherwise,
The wall
it
of
would
the
be an
pot
issue.
would do that.
What?
The wall of the pot would do that. Of the oven.
Well, it's higher up. The walls are higher up.
Toaster
It's a
oven.
Taner Gadol that doesn't.
toaster oven.
Toaster oven, yeah.
You rely on what you rely on what the child said, or do you have to go ask?
No, I'm not saying Allah Chomais. I'm just giving an example.
Interesting case.
So, but halacha l'maisa, we're machmer on that for sure. We don't cook two things in the same oven, especially if they're uncovered. Especially if they're uncovered. But the question of Zayah remains. So there are various opinions, and this is where it all stands, really. There are some that hold that we were very conscious of the Zayah issue, and therefore, if you cook fleischiks open in an oven, that oven is now fleischiks, and you should not cook milchiks in it until you kasher the oven. And there are those that say that we're not as conscious from the Zayah issue, and we're not going to cook together milchiks and fleischiks, but separate, doesn't matter. Now, obviously, there's another issue which comes to play here, is what kind of food makes Zayah? What kind of food makes this steam? So something which is a pot that has liquid in it, that's something that makes steam. But dry food doesn't make steam. So there's always a question, what's called dry, what's called wet? But a dry food, we say in halacha, does not make steam. And therefore, if you have a fleischiger oven, even if you hold that Zayah makes it a problem, you have a fleischiger oven, you want to cook your pizza in it, pashtus, pizza is considered dry food. And therefore, there would be no issue, because you're doing dry food, there's no Zayah now. So what do I care if the walls of the fleischiks are, the oven are fleischiks? This pizza is not touching the walls of the oven. It's just going on the rack, which is on a pad, which is dry and dry. Everything's dry. And therefore, you'd be able to cook your pizza in the oven, the fleischiger oven, according to this opinion, and there's no issue. So just to give you a little background of what comes to play in here. So halacha l'maisa, how should a person be noyeg? Now, if you read there are some that take the what's that? There are some that take the actually I think the Art Scroll Kosher Kitchen book. I think they take the real heavy strict opinion. They say that you have to designate your oven for either milchiks or fleischiks, because just like you can't have a pot and decide one day to use it for milchiks and the next day to kasher and use it for fleischiks, so your oven's like a pot, so you can't use it one day for milchiks, one day for fleischiks. You have to designate it. Shas atchak, you need a cook of something milchiks in it, and you don't have another choice. You can kasher it out or cook for it, but you should keep it designated as milchiks or fleischiks. And for another reason, they say, because you'll forget what it is. Is it milchiks or fleischiks? What did I cook yesterday? So they say you should designate it, and a lot of people are talking like that. The oven is designated for fleischiks, and if for shas atzarich they need it for milchiks, they'll kasher it out, use it for milchiks, and then they'll re-kasher it back to fleischiks to keep it as a standard for fleischiks. It's actually a good idea, but halacha l'maisa, most places don't consider the oven as a pot, and it's considered a shas atchak from the get-go, because you're not mechuyev to buy two ovens.
Say the word again.
Shas atchak is considered a b'diavad at the get-go. You don't have to get two ovens. You can have one oven, and you know you're going to cook milchiks and fleischiks. But what one should be noyeg is to do a libun kal, which we discuss in Hilchos Pesach. A libun kal, for basa b'cholov, you don't need a kasherit, a libun gomer. Because basa b'cholov is not treif. Again, the meat, when you cook meat in it, it's kosher, it's just meat. So it's called hatera bola. For hatera bola, we discuss in Hilchos Pesach, you don't have to do a full burning out a la eish. You can just do hagolah. Hagolah is hard to do on the oven, but you can just burn it lightly, and that serves the same purpose. So you could burn your oven out on the highest temperature between milchiks and fleischiks. Once it gets hot, you should leave it on for 20 minutes. After it's ready hot, it could be it's hot already from the chicken, but as long as it's hot, you can leave it on for an extra 20 minutes, turn it to the highest, and that will burn it out from to make a libun kal. Now, there are those that say, and it's a valid opinion, that you can't do a libun kal without waiting 24 hours first. That would make things a little complicated. But others that go, make a din, you don't need to wait, especially if you don't need, if you don't.
Okay, in our home, it turns out that we're probably inadvertently doing a libun kal. Let's say you don't. You cook your meat, you turn off your oven, you take out the meat, and the next day you want to cook a dairy lasagna.
Right. So the way to be noyeg l'chatchila is to burn it out.
What if we don't? That's the.
If you don't, then the question is become treif your lasagna. That's what you want to know. So that's already a b'diavad and became treif, and that's just subject to all these questions and opinions and everything else. So
And?
it could be makel on that. Could be zozaya.
Okay.
It could be this thing. But l'chatchila, once you get into the practice of after they cook one thing,
To leave them call in either case, meat or dairy, right?
In other words, if you normally cook fleischiks in the oven and you're going to cook milchiks, you do leave in kal before, and it's kedai after you finish doing the milchiks to leave it on the highest for another 20 minutes to do leave in kal to burn it out, and that will take care of that issue.
Our self-cleaning ovens today have the lowest setting of 2 hours.
I know, yeah.
You know, that's the lowest.
Yeah,
I
I'm
think
not
it's-
saying to burn it out on self-clean. That would be a lieben gummer. Talking about to just burn it out on the highest temperature, 550, whatever it is.
But some ovens have racks that you can't put in the self.
I'm not talking about self-clean. Don't self-clean. Turn on the highest thing. Now, I want to point something out, which is important to note. It's not so easy to just burn it out, because even though you could burn it out, just leave for another 20 minutes and it'll be okay. But l'chatchila, what you should do also is put it on to broil for another 20 minutes, because the broil turns the top element on. Well, the cooking is just the bottom element, so you're not really getting the whole oven. So you could taina kabbalah kachpoltoi. You know, I only cooked on with the bottom element, so if I turn on the highest with the bottom element, that should be good enough, and it's a good svara. It's a good svara. But there is l'chatchila kashering that one should turn on the broil afterwards for another 20 minutes. And that would take care of the. That would be a kashering the choladeus. That would be okay with a liben kal.
When you say that there's a suffix that the lasagna might be treif, are you talking about the kalim or the actual food, or both? I guess both.
Yeah,
So if you have a convection oven with a fan,
yeah.
you could turn on either and then turn on the fan so it'll distribute the heat. That would be better then?
I don't know how that works. I can't
It's
comment.
just a fan that
Distributes
makes
the
heat
heat
go
equally.
in all corners.
Keeps the same heat.
Keeps the same heat everywhere.
No. When you're doing the leave-in cup.
Yeah. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
All right.
Coming.
Wouldn't it be better though, rather than leaving it on 20 minutes after you finish, to wait, if you're cooking the next day, to wait the next day to turn it on 20 minutes before you
You're right. It
start?
would be better, but you might forget then. You're right. It would be better to you have the chumrah. You wait. You have those shitas that you wait 24 hours and then you do the
So we have, there's a real practical issue, sorry gentlemen. You're cooking for Shabbos and your wife puts on the timer so that the oven turns off right before you make kiddush. You're not, you're not doing a leave-in call at this point.
No.
So you have no choice, you have to do it the next day then.
Yeah, it's for Shabbos. Yeah.
Okay, I'm just trying to work this out, these details.
Again, this is l'chatchila how a person should be noyeg.
Not easy being Jewish.
Look, there are people that are machmet, have 2 ovens and this and that and everything. But
ovens.
again,
Get two
who had 2
houses.
ovens in the old
A
days?
milking house and a fleshing house.
Did
That's the best.
That's the best. But then you have to get milking clothes as well,
That's
so
2.8 million.
that's so reasonable today.
Let's go next door.
It's just money.
So much more reasonable. One day it'll be worth
Is the problem
5.6.
with Zaya that it transfers actual food product from one thing to another?
Yeah,
Or does it
yeah.
just have its own halakhic status?
No, it's like water. Zay becomes like water. Becomes like water. So like you have a pot of water and you put a piece of
Leave my home.
meat in that water.
I'm not
So
eating.
More-
it'll transfer
more than I
the
do.
taste of
Just
the
not
meat
eating.
into the walls of the pot.
So
Just don't cook.
So if
Like
Zaya,
that.
it's again, it's a machlokes, but if Zaya has a din
Just
of water,
water.
then it would transfer it.
So
So
would
that is
you
a
do-
shaila if it's Zaya. There's what to rely on. I'm just saying that this is the background for the question of the oven.
So what did you do 100 years ago? You had a wood stove. The stove is made of metal.
It's the same thing. They kashed it.
How?
How? How'd they cook in it?
Put wood, it heated it up. And a lot of
So
them
hot.
actually,
Oh, boy.
actually you were lucky with a wood stove.
because it
Now
was
that-
always going. It was always
It was
burning.
always hot.
So we did the same thing.
Yeah, so it's
But-
self kashed itself.
But you had one thing, you had multiple ovens.
Well, your stove was your furnace. too.
No, every farmhouse, northern Ontario, had a wood stove.
Okay, so
in
let's
case,
just yeah. So let's just go to the microwave for a moment. We'll end with the microwave because the microwave is like the real hot topics today. You go
That
to
topic.
you go to
No
a
pun
hotel and you
intended.
want to heat up your food in the microwave.
Waiting for this.
You know. Oh, just getting back to the oven again. If the food is covered, technically, really, if the food is covered, you don't have zaya because it doesn't get out. So if you cover your food, technically, it will be okay, even if you didn't kasher out your oven. It's covered. The question
You would
is,
need a leave-in call.
You wouldn't need anything. You cover the food.
Okay, I'll write this down quickly.
If you cover it well, the question is only if it will stay covered and how good of a job it'll be.
Comes out.
It comes out, it spills over, but it could be it's enough to get rid of the zayah.
Yeah.
The spillage you might not help for, but the zayah could be it's enough. But that's where you get the double wrap. We call double wrap. The reason why we double it is not because it says anyway you have to have two. It's just
Prevent the steam from coming out.
yeah, it's better. 2 is better than 1. 3 or 4 is better than 2. The more you wrap it, the better chance you have it's not going to come out. But then you avoid the whole issue of zayah. Okay, questions about chatchila, but at least I have many people here that comes. I get to Shiloh all the time. You have a bocher that's became religious, and his parents are not religious, and he wants to be able to heat up food in the oven. Wants to be able to heat up food in the oven at home. So how should he do it? And then all these questions come to play. It's dry and dry. The racks are dry. This is dry. You could put the pan down. You cover it well. So it shouldn't be zayah. You have to find eitzah that they should be able to survive. So these are things.
So if you're cooking
Whenever you go to the airplane, they double wrap it. They stick it in. They heat it up. It's double. It's covered. That's what you're relying on. That it's covered. There's no zayah.
do we believe that certain things create ziyah and certain things don't?
Yeah. That's
So if you're making a roast,
that's what we said.
it's got water in the bottom, that's
roast
going to create
has zayah,
ziyah.
yeah.
And again, what did you give as an example?
Dry things, perhaps pizza, things like that. Things that
Doesn't.
are dry, yeah, would it? Again, there's questions on everything, but that's basic understanding. Now, so going to a microwave is very hard to say what has zayah, what doesn't have zayah. A lot of things actually steam in there. Even though you could say if it's a dry piece of bread, it's not going to make steam, But I don't know, maybe it also does.
If you take, this is what we do, I don't know if it's right or wrong, take a cup of water, in a glass cup, put it in the microwave,
And steam it.
we steam it, wipe it out,
Yeah, so that's kashering it. But the issue is like this.
in between.
The issue is, he's asking, could you kasher it in between, kasher microwave? So there's a question if a microwave could be kashered because it's plastic on the inside. That's one question. I'm not going to go into the whole discussion now. And then another question is, even if you could kasher it, you have to wait 24 hours because that's hagolah. Steaming is hagolah, and for hagolah you have to wait 24 hours between uses before you could do hagolah. So there's no way to kasher something that was used for fleishiks in the morning, and you want to use it in the afternoon for milchiks, to kasher it. There's no way you could do that. You'd have to wait. So if, let's say, if it hasn't been used in 24 hours, then you could kasher it. Now there is a svara that a person should clean it up. If a guy wants to use the microwave and he's renting a place, so he should take a kasher it, clean it, kasher it. But since it has zayah, l'chatchila, whatever you put in there should be covered. Should be covered well. It's sometimes hard to cover things that go into the microwave because but they have these microwavable containers, and if it's covered well, then you avoid the issue of zayah. Then you just get into the shiloh of two kelim touching each other. So again, the best thing is to put down put something in between. So you should put something in between the plate. You could kasher the plate by pouring hot water on the plate. The plate is glass. You could kasher it by putting hot water on it, or you could just put something in between. In case there's spillage or anything. Put something in between the plate and the things that you're putting in there, but things should be covered because there's a lot of steam, and the steam takes from the walls, and it's questionable whether you could really kasher the walls, depending on what it's made out of. If it's metal, it could be kashered. If you have some of these ovens, they're metal, you could kasher it, but if it's plastic, it's questionable. So it's better if it's
they're all
covered.
metal
Like
coated.
No.
You have
They-
these
they
on
can't
top of the
plastic?
ovens.
Plastic.
You have these
You
conventional.
can't put metal in a microwave at all, they spark.
I've seen
So
that
you know
before.
they're
I thought separate from the
microwavable
wall.
containers.
Yeah,
So if you have it in one of those containers,
yeah.
then what if you would double put it in a
It's-
plastic
it's
bag or just
treated.
wrap it in
It's
saran?
not-
Is that so
Could
now
I
you've got the
Flick your,
the container plus
it
another
feels like
wrapping.
plastic.
But there's a coating.
Yeah, but if
right?
it's
not-
sealed, the
not metal.
container, you shouldn't even need another wrapping. I don't know if
but-
it's sealed.
No, I think for the metal would absorb.
You wouldn't need it.
If it's sealed, it's not going to open.
Um,
So all the other wrapping is just to make sure, it's in case it opens, and make sure it's closed properly,
if one has accidentally put a piece of chicken.
But if you do another wrapping, that will take care of the problem when you put it down.
Right, or that container on a napkin.
Yeah, yeah.
If one accidentally put a piece of chicken in your dairy microwave oven, then you kasher it, are you saying from that point forward, when you go back to dairy, everything's going to have to be covered because of the potential zayah? forever and ever and ever?
Well, it could be there. It's a shayla of a terabola. It's not a trefa microwave. It's a terabola. So
What's that mean?
The milchix is mutter and the fleshix is mutter. So you're just.
Oh, okay. So let's say a piece of hamburger meat.
So yeah, that's a real problem. But if you have something which is milchix and fleshix, then there's a svar you could kasher it. Even though it's plastic, you could kasher it.
No, for sure.
By
But
putting the cup in
will I
after
have
waiting
to-
24 hours.
will I have to cover what my dairy stuff that I'll put in after I kasher it?
No,
forever?
no. You kasher it's okay. There's a svar you could kasher plastic.
So what
b'shas
were you referring about then covering it later in the future?
You go into a hotel and you want to use the microwave and you want to rely on kashering, it's not so l'chatchila. But if I have a microwave at home that I use and by accident
Oh, I
it became treif, so there's a svar you could kasher it actually because there's a shiloh plastic of kasher, but there's a shasat chak already. You don't have to go buy another microwave. So and if you clean it well and you wait 24 hours and you kasher it, there's a svar you could use it again.